The first thing Armin noticed wasn't the silence, it was the way the little girl's eyes kept searching for something that never came. It was a bright, golden morning, the kind that made everything look hopeful from a distance. But inside the grand marble hall of the charity event, the atmosphere felt strangely hollow. People laughed loudly, spoke over one another, and clinked glasses as if noise alone could prove their importance. And yet, in the middle of all that, one child stood completely alone, unheard in a world full of voices. Before we step deeper into this story, take a moment. If you believe in kindness and second chances, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Verse. You never know whose life your support might touch. Armin Qureshi wasn't supposed to be there. His shirt was ironed, but old. His shoes were polished, but worn thin at the edges. He had been invited as a delivery contractor, dropping off catering supplies. A single father raising his 6-year-old son, Zion, he didn't have time for places like this, or people like them. But life had taught Armin something long ago. Sometimes, you don't walk into places because you belong there. Sometimes, you walk in because someone else needs you. As he set down the last of the boxes near the buffet table, his eyes drifted again to the girl. She stood near a pillar, her delicate dress shimmering faintly under the sunlight pouring through tall windows. Her hair was neatly tied, her posture composed, but her face carried a quiet ache that didn't belong on a child. People passed by her constantly. Some smiled politely at her father, a powerful billionaire businessman named Raheel Sadiq, who was busy shaking hands and accepting praise. But no one stopped for the girl. No one spoke to her. No one even noticed the way her small hands moved restlessly, trying to say something no one understood. Armin felt something tighten in his chest. He had seen that look before. Years ago, when his wife was still alive, she had worked as a special education teacher. She used to come home and tell him stories, not of disabilities, but of worlds hidden behind silence. She had taught him the basics of sign language, not out of necessity, but out of love. Back then, it felt like a small skill. Something nice to know. Now, it felt like a bridge waiting to be crossed. He hesitated. This wasn't his place. These weren't his people. That man, the girl's father, could probably buy and sell Armin's entire life without blinking. What right did he have to step into their world? But then the girl looked up again, her eyes scanning faces, hope flickering and fading in the same breath. And that was enough. Armin walked toward her slowly, careful not to startle her. She noticed him, of course. Her eyes met his, cautious but curious. Most people looked through her. He looked at her. He stopped a few steps away, then gently raised his hands. Hello. The movement was simple, but to her, it was everything. Her eyes widened in disbelief. For a moment, she didn't move at all, as if afraid that if she blinked, the moment would disappear. Then, slowly, her hands lifted too. Hello. And just like that, the silence shattered, not with sound, but with understanding. Armin knelt slightly to be at her level, his hands moving carefully, remembering, forming words he hadn't used in years. He asked her name. Alia. It came from her hands with a grace that felt like music. He told her his name. He asked if she was enjoying the event. She hesitated, then shook her head with a small, honest smile. It was the kind of truth children give when they don't yet know how to pretend. Around them, the world continued as it always had, loud, busy, indifferent. But in that small corner, something rare was unfolding. Alia laughed. Not loudly, not in a way that demanded attention. But her face lit up, her shoulders relaxed, and for the first time that morning, she looked like a child instead of a shadow. Armin felt his throat tighten. He didn't notice that someone else had been watching. Raheel Sadiq had paused mid-conversation. At first, it was curiosity that caught his attention. Then confusion. Then something deeper, something almost like regret. He had spent years building an empire, ensuring his daughter had everything money could buy. The best doctors, the finest schools, the most luxurious life imaginable. And yet, he had never learned her language. Never truly spoken to her. Now, a stranger, a delivery man in worn shoes, was doing in minutes what he had failed to do in years. Raheel took a step closer, unnoticed by the others. He watched as Alia's hands moved quickly, excitedly, her expressions animated in a way he had rarely seen. He realized, with a sinking feeling, that he didn't understand a single word she was saying. But Armin did. Armin listened. Armin responded. Armin saw her. And that changed everything. The event ended hours later, but something lingered long after the guests had gone. Raheel approached Armin quietly, his usual confidence replaced by something unfamiliar, humility. He didn't speak immediately. For a moment, he simply looked at his daughter, who stood beside Armin, her hand lightly holding his sleeve as if afraid he might disappear. Then he looked at Armin. There are moments in life when pride must step aside for truth. This was one of them. Raheel made a decision that day, not with words, but with action. He asked Armin to stay. Not as a servant, not as an employee in the traditional sense, but as a teacher. As a bridge between him and his daughter. At first, Armin refused. He had responsibilities. A son waiting at home. A life that didn't allow room for sudden changes. But then he thought of Zion. Of the lessons he wanted to pass on. Of the kind of man he hoped his son would become. And he thought of Alia's eyes. So he agreed, but on one condition. He wouldn't just teach Raheel. He would teach them both. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. Slowly, awkwardly at first, Raheel began to learn. His hands stumbled. His expressions faltered. But he tried. And Alia noticed. Each small effort became a victory. Each correct sign became a celebration. Their world, once separated by silence, began to fill with meaning. Armin never asked for recognition. He never sought reward. For him, it was enough to see a father and daughter finally find their way to each other. But life has a way of giving back to those who give without expecting. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of gold and amber, Raheel made another decision. He offered Armin a permanent position, not just as a tutor, but as part of his foundation, helping create programs for children like Alia. Programs that would ensure no child would ever feel invisible again. Armin accepted. Not for the money. Not for the prestige. But for the purpose. Because sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest changes. Before we reach the end, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us, have you ever seen kindness change someone's life? Your story might inspire someone else. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Verse. Your support helps spread these stories to the people who need them most.